Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. It's presented, as always, by Exterior Home Solutions. For a free estimate, you should give them a call today at 865-524-5888. Whether it's making repairs to your home for the summer storms, you have an upgrade, siding, roofing, windows, whatever that case may be, let the good folks at Exterior Home Solutions help you out. ExteriorHomeSolutions.com or a free estimate at 865-524-5888. With Rob Lewis, Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, I am Eric Kane. We got a full bank of questions, and so we will dive right down into it. The big news of Wednesday, Brent Hubbs. Sam Smith, 2233, wants to know your thoughts on Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center.
Well, I mean, I think this is the world that we live in college athletics. We've all talked about it. Is there enough money from the donor world to go around with NIL and everything that's out there? And how important is corporate dollars? And I think corporate dollars are important. I think Tennessee is going to be mindful of the corporate dollar. Are they going to be willing to accept corporate dollars? Yes. Are there going to be some things that are sacred and not touched? In my opinion, yeah. I don't think you're going to see Neyland Stadium become anything other than Neyland Stadium. It's not going to be Neyland Stadium or anything like that. Would they sell? We know that they've been trying to corporately sponsor the North End Zone party deck. Could club suites be for sale from a corporate sponsorship standpoint? Sure. Baseball stadium, absolutely. That's already known out there. I just think in the arms race of all the money that you're looking for when you're $200 million budgets and you're paying these salaries and all the things that you're doing, this is part of it. And I think you're seeing this at a lot of places. You've seen it in pro sports. I think the model's trickling down more and more into college sports. That being said, I do think there are certain things that they're not going to be touched. So I don't think fans have to freak out about that or worry about that.
Yeah, for me, the initial, gnashing of teeth because people don't like change or, just don't like it, whatever. I think it's a much about nothing. I mean, it's Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center, which means it's still got Thompson Bowling Arena on it. People are still going to call it Tommy Bowl, TBA, whatever you want to call it. Just like I call it Twitter still, not X. Does anybody say, have you X'd lately? But people say, did you see that tweet? It's just common. It's ingrained in you. Same thing with calling it Thompson Bowling Arena. And if you can get the rub off of $20 million from Food City and they get signage, and when the ESPN does the aerial shot of Thompson Bowling Arena and they say, oh, tonight here at Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center, it's Florida and Tennessee. That's a win-win for Danny White and win-win for everybody.
We'll go to BC Lion 06. Which edge rusher do you think will have the bigger impact this season, Joshua Josephs or James Pierce?
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I think it's 6-1 and half a dozen the other. Man, it's take your pick.
I think, Brent, that they both have flashed in fall camp, and I just don't think we know yet. I think right now, the guy that's been the most consistent player in fall camp has been Roman Harrison. And so, again, what translates once the games get kicked off? Because nobody at August 23rd of 2022 had Jalen Hyatt doing what Jalen Hyatt did, right? So, you just don't know until, some games are played and you get out there and get into the flow of the season.
Yeah, from a physicality standpoint, from a look standpoint, I think James Pierce's body probably looks like a more complete player. But Joshua Joseph's got long arms, a guy who played a lot last year. I think it's very much going to be a hot hand. Whoever's playing well is going to get more and more snaps. And Rodney Garner's been asking for one of those two guys to emerge or both of them to emerge for 6 months now, and I think he's still asking that question. That's not to say they've been bad. It's just to remind everybody they're second-year players, and they're still figuring it out. So we'll see how much they've figured it out in the Virginia game and Austin Peay before they get ready to go to Gainesville, Florida. If you're a Tennessee fan, what you hope is both of them have 4 or 5 sacks, 6 sacks a year this year. As opposed to which one becomes the 9-sack guy or whatever. You hope both of them are really, really, really effective.
And meaningful sacks. Pierce had several sacks last year that were in garbage time. None of them really mattered. You need him to have sacks in meaningful time. Maybe much like, Josh Joseph said that big sack of down at LSU last year. That's the sacks you need.
Yep, you're a good point. Good point.
While we're on that subject, Caleb Herring, how's he done in fall camp as a true freshman AP?
He's done great. Again, I think he's somebody who will play this year. Now, is he in that James Pierce, Josh Joseph's role that maybe flashes and gets a sack in a big game, or cleans up and mop up duty against some lesser teams. I mean, possibly, but he's definitely had his mind in the right place and been really focused.
And I may be wrong on this, but to me, Rob, he feels more like what Josh Joseph was in year one in terms of how much he's going to play. He's Pierce was a true mop-up duty guy. And I think that's because Pierce struggled transitioning from high school to college. I don't think that's been the case with Caleb Herring.
Yeah, and I mean, Joseph's had a package, and like early in the season, I mean, he had a pack. I mean, I'm with you, Rob. I envision Caleb Herring being that way, and we've all not been around him much. And AP, I know you've been around him in the recruiting process. Man, he seems like a really mature young man that knows what he wants and is working to get it.
Yeah, especially now that he's back around his brother. I think that's 100% the case.
Rob Lewis said moments ago, 6 and 1 and half a dozen of the other. Reminded me of what my mother always says, but I think that can apply to the next question I'm going to ask you, Rob. Knox_Vol, if you had a college fantasy draft, which receiver would you pick on your team from Tennessee?
Man, I mean, if you go with proven, commodity, you take Broom, and if you want potential, you take Thornton. I mean, I think I'm excited to see Dante Thornton this year. I really am. I don't know what his ceiling is. But man, athletically, he looks like a dude for sure. But I don't know, if you go the safe pick, you take Brew. If you want to roll the dice, you take Thornton.
And if it's a PPR league, you take Ramel Keaton.
Oh, look at that, AP.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. Not that I'm a big fantasy guy, but what are the rules in this fantasy deal? Because the slot receiver at Tennessee is going to be the most productive guy in terms of big plays, touchdowns. That's probably going to be the most productive guy that way. If you're talking about guy who's going to catch the most balls, then probably Ramel Keaton or Brew McCoy. But you're talking about a guy who's going to catch big touchdowns and big chunk plays, it's going to be the guy in the slot, I would think, based on what we've seen out of Josh Heupel's offense in 2 years in Knoxville.
ATL VFL AP wants to know, Brent, I've actually heard you chime in on this a lot over the last year, but what changes of the recruiting or player commitment rules would you like to see?
I don't think there's anything you can do to the commitment rules. I mean, what rules are there? You can commit as many times as you want.
I think maybe he's talking about signing or moving signing day.
I took it more or less about the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there needs to be two signing periods that are so close together, because I just think it's a waste. Hubs has advocated for this for a few years now of bumping the one up. Problem is with the way it's all structured now, I mean, I don't think it really matters because if kids really want to get out of it, they can. And, so to me, it kind of is what it is. I don't, I mean, you can make a few tweaks here and there. I'm not sure it's going to change anything dramatically.
Well, if you're going to keep the early date and you're going to allow springtime official visits and all of the open visits that are taking place during the spring and the summertime, then why not have the first signing date September 1 and the second one in December when it is now, and let's close down some more windows in the wintertime for coaches not to live on the road the entire time that way. Perhaps, I don't know, but what's Tennessee's board look like right now, Austin, for the class of 24? What, they got 5-6 guys?
Yeah, I mean it's Chris Cole, it's Danny Okoye, it's Cam Michael, it's Jordan Seaton, it's Nasir Smith. They're still trying on Amiris Williams, Cam Fountain, and then Daniel Hill is still. I mean, Daniel Hill still actually reaches out to Tennessee, even though like most people have him pegged for Bama or South Carolina. That's the only interesting thing that is to me. Like he decided not to announce, and I think he's more like a Bennett Warren type deal. I think there's a divide in the household on who wants to go where, and I think that's why there was a delay. And let's see, maybe Tennessee ends up getting a visit, and maybe they're the meet in the middle place.
Well, and so my point is, you got a very small number, Rob Lewis, of guys that you're dealing with now, and those guys are clearly committed to waiting to December. Okay, I mean, coaches like the fact they don't have to babysit anybody in January anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So would you like to get Jordan Ross's signature September 1 and not have to worry about that one through? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
I've said this the whole time. I mean, ever since they put it in December, I think it should be like the week of Labor Day or whatever. I'm like AP said, I mean, they're so close together. We're talking about 8 weeks. I mean, not 8 weeks. What, like 6 weeks?
There's a huge dead period in between them. I mean,
yeah, it's just
8 weeks and 6 of it's dead, or 5 of it's dead, or something crazy.
I mean, if you want it to be meaningful, let the kids sign in September. People say, "Oh, that's so early. That's so early." I mean, the vast majority of these kids anymore, at least at this level, are early enrollees. It's not that early. It's 2 or 3 months before they're coming to campus. And basketball has had an early signing period in November for decades, and it's no problem. It's just fine. I mean, so I don't. For me, I've always thought that once they did the 2 signing periods, it was meaningless to put the one in December. It should be sometime in the fall. You can decide what date that is, but kids don't have to worry about playing a high school football game, getting in the car at 6 a.m. the next morning, getting on the road to take a visit. Like coaches don't have to sweat getting out on the road on Friday night to babysit a commitment just so mom and dad see them in the stands wearing the polo. I'm a strong advocate for like a September signing period.
And so many of these guys commit in July and early August now. Yeah, coming off official visits in June, and their 7 unofficial visits, from the last season before that.
You don't think that Josh Heupel would love to go ahead and be like, Jordan Ross, let's go ahead and get you in September 1, big dog.
There you go.
Get him in.
And like AP said, I mean, it takes the heat off the coaches. They don't want to babysit these guys, and to me, that would be a win-win. And it also, I sound like a broker. Like AP said, it's not like these kids can't get out of a letter in this day and age. I mean,
but then again, you may still have. I mean, there's coaches now that in the early signing period still go and watch them play basketball, which makes no sense. So, who knows what these coaches will still do?
I mean,
let's go to Nader Tater, 1996. Who starts at quarterback for the 2023 Volunteers? 2021 version of Milton or current version of Nico Iamaleava?
I don't understand what is that? I don't even understand.
Is Nico right now better than Joe was 2 years ago?
Joe would still start, right, Brent?
Here's the interesting thing. Physically, Joe would be better 2 years ago than Nico is right now. Here's the thing people forget about Joe. Joe didn't start learning this offense until the summer, about 3 months before he started his first game, right? I mean, he got here May, AP, so maybe 4 months, something like that.
Yeah.
Nico's been here since December. He's got 8 months of work and learning the offense. In some ways, Nico's probably further along with chemistry of receivers and knowledge of the offense, even though he's a high school or a college freshman versus Joe, who came in and was in short order. Now, physically, Joe was more ready to play than Nico is, 2 years ago than Nico is right now. But I don't know that that's a laydown for Joe simply because Nico's got so much more time learning the offense than Joe had that first year in 21. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense because, again, Nico's been here. He went through spring practice. He's been throwing with those receivers for much longer instead of just getting here in the summer, going through workouts, fall camp, and then essentially being handed the keys. So from a mental aspect of the offense, for sure. But then again, Joe Milton's played Power 5 football. He's bigger. He's more physically, ready to play. But in terms of the overall offense, yeah, I mean, Nico might be further along than Joe was at this point in time 2 years ago. He goes on to ask, I know Coach Willie Martinez might have a long leash with guys like Jalen McCullough, but how long do y'all think Milton's leash truly is if he were to struggle?
Oh, I mean, I think it's...
Here we go. We're a week out. Let's get the Nico mania going, right?
You knew. Hey, the first interception Joe throws, now he hadn't thrown one yet in a Tennessee uniform, but he will. The first one he throws, there'll be Nico chance. I mean, of course, that's.
I mean, I don't think there is a leash. I mean, you guys.
I don't think there is one.
I think it's an injury. I mean, I think the injury is.
This is Joe's team. Tennessee would have to be struggling mightily
for weeks upon weeks.
I mean, I think it'd have to be Nathan Peterman in the swamp for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Level.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think it's even. I mean, I know you can't help it.
Remember, those same fans that are clamoring for Nico right now, and I'm not even gonna say it. Never mind. I'm
just gonna. Hey, Eric, you should timestamp that. The first. For when that first popped up, that conversation topic.
Newman 1 says, is there interest from Daniel Hill? Is it genuine or is it more NIL based off leverage against Alabama and South Carolina?
Well, I don't think that Alabama plays in the NIL world, but I don't think they're getting sucked into back and forth, just because Tennessee's, entered the picture a little bit. I don't think it's NIL related. I think that the kid just likes Jerry Mack and enjoys talking to him, and Jerry's continued to work the relationship. Again, I would still take South Carolina or Alabama, more likely Alabama, and we'll see if he gets here for a visit. If he does, it'll probably be for that South Carolina game, which is same week that Okoye's visiting, and could be the same weekend that Cam Michael visits if he bumps up his visit from the Georgia weekend in November. So, we'll see if he makes it here. If he makes it here, they got a puncher's shot, and nothing more at this point.
Let's stay with AP. Swagger 12 says, no, Austin loves percentages, so I have one for him here. Percentage chance these recruits actually official visit with Tennessee. Okoye, Cole, Seaton, Cam Michael, Wingo, Smith, and Fountain.
Let's go over them one at a time. Okoye, 100%.
Cole.
100%.
Seaton.
95%.
Michael.
100%.
Wingo.
20%.
Smith.
100%.
Fountain.
I'll go 65%.
So great high percentages there for the majority of those that were mentioned. Let's go. This is from Lee Creek. How are the Vols going to manage all these running backs in the rotation this year, Brent Hubbs?
I mean, I think they're going to play the hot hand. I think they'll play Jalen Wright, Jabari Small. Dylan Sampson will get some, but I mean, as Jerry Mack has said all along, the best thing he's got going in his room is competition. You better not take a day off. I think Cam Seldon's going to his presence on this team is going to be in mop-up duty on offense, which is going to get everybody excited, and it's going to be in special teams, probably as a kick returner. I think is a real possibility early on for him. Where's it at? Halfway through the year, we'll see. I mean, Jabari Small's had some injury concerns, as we know, and we'll see. I don't think Jerry Mack's sitting around going, okay, how do I get this one 8, this one 12, this one 11 to keep everybody happy? I don't think that's the way the running back room is going to roll. So I think Jalen Wright separated himself this fall camp and is right now the best back on Tennessee's roster in this offense.
Rocky Top T said, if you had to pick only one, who was the best running back you've seen play at Tennessee? Rob Lewis.
I go Jamal Lewis, and I saw Chuck Webb play and Reggie Cobb, but I go Jamal Lewis.
Anybody else?
I mean, Jamal was just stupid talented, ready to play out of the gate. Chuck Webb, I mean, would have played forever in the NFL if had not had the knee injury. I mean, to me, you're splitting hairs a little bit there. Jamal's probably bigger, but I mean, Chuck Webb could run. And then the outside guy on this, who's a total different style of back, who was a really good player, who would have thrived in this offense and actually went on and had a really nice NFL career, was Charlie Garner. To me, those are the top 3 backs at Tennessee. That's my top 3 backs.
David Yancey and Kirsten Biggers, they just were held down by coaching staffs who would not play them outside of the spring.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, though, Jamal's feet for a guy that big, I mean, was just remarkable. And I'm not selling Chuck Webb short. I didn't mean it to sound that way. I thought he was fantastic. I mean, loved him. I just really think Jamal was special.
What's interesting about Jamal and Chuck both is they really had short careers when you think about it. I mean, Jamal played halfway through his freshman year because he didn't know pass protection. So he played half of that year. He got hurt week 4 of the 98 season at Auburn, missed the rest of that year, and it was very limited in 99 with an ankle. I mean, he didn't leave here with a ton of carries. Now, he left here with a couple of hellacious days when you talk about playing Ole Miss and you talk about what he did against Georgia. But he really had a small career, much like Chuck. Chuck got hurt, was never the same after that, which is really, really different because those guys were not, 3-year, you're the guy focal point type deals. And then, Charlie comes in. You talk about the previous question, how do you split time? The greatest miracle of all is that somehow Tennessee figured out a way to keep Charlie Garner, Little Man Stewart, and Aaron Hayden all happy in the same year. I mean, think about the freshman years that Little Man and Aaron had, and you walk in January and Phillip goes, hey, by the way, I'm bringing in the #1 junior college running back in the country to take your job. after y'all both earned freshman all conference or freshman all American honors. You know, in a day and age of a one-time transfer portal, that might have been hard to sell. You know, the way it is now, but those guys stuck it out, and all three of them had terrific careers.
You talking about Ken Sparks moving to the edge of his seat with little man Stewart looking around.
All right, we got plenty more questions to get into here on this edition of the Mailbag Podcast, but real quick, want to give a quick shout out to a proud sponsor of the show, that is Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but the fit is way better. What happens is those regular shorts are made of stiff, restricting cotton, but Bird Dogs fixed that issue by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches so you get that way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Also, Bird Dogs uses an anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Versatility is the name of the game. You got a pair of slacks, a couple pair of shorts, whether you're going on a date with the wife, to church, business meeting, whatever the case is, Bird Dogs has got the right fit for you, so you look good and you feel good all day long. And I encourage you to go to birddogs.com/VQ or enter that promo code VQ for a free Bird Dog Tech hats with your order. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you see this hat looking pretty stylish. You get that free if you put in that promo code VQ at birddogs.com/VQ. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. And as always, a big shout out to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Nominate a family that you think is deserving of the Exterior Home Makeover. A gift from your friends at Exterior Home Solutions.
Vol for Life wants to know in regards to peer recruiting, what players in this class have taken on that role, Austin?
Well, I think it's Boo Carter. Boo Carter works it extremely hard, and and so does Jake Merklinger. But I mean, for me, it's Boo. Boo carries so much weight with these kids, and he works it on Instagram, he works it on Twitter, he works it, DMs, phone texts. I mean, you name it, he does it. So, it's Mr. Big Personality, Boo Carter.
Doolittle Vol wants to know, will Tennessee still be willing to schedule a Power 5 non-conference game if and when the SEC goes to 9 games and removes that stipulation that you got to play one Power 5?
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
Who's to say they're going to 9 and they're gonna do that?
And who's to say if they go to 9 that they won't keep the same stipulation?
Yeah. I mean,
because that may be how they get the most. I mean, listen, they're going to do whatever gets them the most money.
Yeah.
And if ESPN says we need 9 plus 1, they're going to keep the plus 1. If they say you can stay at 8, but we need the plus 1, I think at 8 you're getting definitely a plus 1. But at 9, I think that to get the most money, you're going to have a plus 1.
That would benefit the South Carolinas, the Floridas, the Georgias, the Kentuckys, who all have that end of the season rivalry game from a Power 5 opponent, not in the SEC.
I mean, I don't know if it benefits them because, I mean, in some instances, Florida has to play Florida State. And up Florida State is a rough way to end the season, just same way with South Carolina and Clemson. I think it gives Tennessee the ability to go and kind of pick, potential Power 5 opponents, which to me is always easier than, okay, you're playing this team who traditionally is really, really good.
Carl82 says, when do you expect the return of some of these guys from injuries? And some of these guys he's asking about, they've already returned and been back at practice. But we'll know about Cooper Mays, Dylan Sampson, Elijah Simmons, Kamal Haddon, Wesley Walker, and Tamarian McDonald. Those DBs have been back in the fold for a little bit. What about Mays, Sampson, Simmons?
I think Sampson's back.
Yeah.
Simmons, I think it's October at the earliest. And Cooper Mays, we'll see. I don't think he starts the opener. I don't think he plays in the opener. I think the first game potentially he could play would be Austin Peay, but I think more than likely Florida would be the targeted date for his return, providing he heals and gets back, on time.
That'd be a tough first game back. Road game, loud, trying to get continuity of the guys around you, but you take them back as soon as you can, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Pine wants to know, if you had to pick a trap game, which one would it be? Which game do you like the most that falls on the schedule? All right, trap game, Rob Lewis. Is there a trap game for Tennessee on the schedule?
Is Texas A&M, they're ranked in the preseason. I know. Is that can you call them a trap game?
Man, it's coming off a bye. So I wouldn't really consider it that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, if I'm just talking about team talent wise, I mean, I don't.
It's in front of Alabama, so I recognize you might be focusing on Alabama, but
I'm just kind of focusing on how they were so bad all over the map last year, and I would expect them to be better. I don't know. This doesn't really qualify as a trap, but I have said I think these guys are going to be better than some people think. And Tennessee goes to Missouri before they play Georgia. I don't think Tennessee's going to lose that game. They scored 1,000 points on them the last 2 years. But I would throw that one. I would toss Missouri out there, although with not a lot of conviction.
I think Missouri and/or Kentucky, just because defensive lines for both teams are pretty good. And, what does Tennessee's offensive line look like? I mean, I think that they can mask it a lot early on, but over the course of the season, how dinged up do they get Brent? That to me, that's going to be a telltale sign on how Tennessee's able to block it up front.
Yeah, and you're getting Kentucky at Kentucky the week after you play Alabama, which should be a physical game by nature there. So I know a lot of Kentucky fans feel like that game falls really well on the schedule for them. Of course, they think they're going to win the East, with Leary at quarterback, so they're going to be confident. Now it's Kentucky; they found ways to lose this game. Josh Heupel scored 1,000,000 points in the first quarter against them. Somebody's been wide open like the first 4 drives of the last 2 meetings that they played. So we'll see. But that one is not a trap game like overlooking them, but that's a tough game because of just coming off the Alabama game, going to Kentucky. I don't think UTSA is Texas San Antonio is good enough to come in here and win. I think they're a better team than a lot of fans believe that they are. That's between a trip to Gainesville and South Carolina coming to town. I think Tennessee beats UTSA. That might be a little closer than everybody thinks initially, but I don't see them losing that game. So I would go Kentucky, just not necessarily trap like overlooking kind of the conventional trap thought process, but just by the way that game falls on the calendar coming after Alabama heading to Lexington.
Don't you think it helps that everybody is kind of like that's one of the trendy upset picks, before the season starts? Like, people are talking about it, so it makes it a little easier for Heupel and the staff to go, look, guys, everybody's predicting you to drop this one, and then they focus in.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, is there a game on the schedule that you think falls really well for Tennessee? Georgia late?
I think Texas A&M, because it's coming off a bye. A&M,
Yeah.
I think, is going to be improved. They've got a boatload of talent, but you get them at home and you get them off a bye. So I would, for the same reasons that, you don't maybe like Kentucky because you're playing them after Bama, you're getting A&M off a bye. I would like that game.
That's my pick.
Yeah, I agree there too. I think that makes the most sense.
Lemmy Chaser says Danny White offer or was interested in Tony Elliott as a head coach. A lot of beef going on with that situation. So what is true and what is not?
Danny White interviewed Tony Elliott. They had a conversation. I think that's well known. It happened in Atlanta on a day where they interviewed multiple candidates for the job. Obviously, Danny White's very clear in that he did not offer Tony Elliott the job. Tony Elliott, Dabo Swinney, put it out there for recruiting purposes that he did. He turned down Tennessee State to be the OC at Clemson. So that was kind of their narrative there. But it's very clear where Danny White stands on this one, that he didn't offer him the job. I've not talked to Tony Elliott. I'm surprised Tony Elliott's still talking about it 2 years after the fact. I don't think it helps Tony Elliott to be talking about it. He's got his own things he needs to be dealing with at Virginia. The last thing he needs to do is to talk about what job that he could have had, and didn't take, or supposedly could have had and didn't take, and all that. I'll tell you this, Danny White, that was not just a random, well, that kind of hacks me off tweet that he put out. That was I'm hacked off and telling the world that this is not true tweet. So you know exactly where Danny White stands on this. Now, Tony Elliott said on and off for a couple of years that he was offered the Tennessee job, but Danny White certainly doesn't feel that way at all. I wasn't in the room, though.
Atherin's got a couple questions here. Thoughts on where Tennessee stands with Chris Cole? Does having the OV a day before his commitment date kind of put the writing on the wall?
No, I don't think it puts the writing on the wall. I mean, does he mean that he's coming here? No, I don't think so. I think Tennessee was, wanted to get him back to campus. He was amenable to coming back to campus before he announces. And, there was some talk that he may push it back, but I don't believe that's going to be the case now. And, again, Tennessee, with a strong weekend could, ride the wave or whatever, in that conclusion with Chris Cole. Right now, to me, it's them, Georgia, and I just don't believe that. I think everybody else is, window dressing. He's going to take that visit to USC. I mean, I guess he gets out there and he's riding around with some rapper in LA and and kind of gets swept up in the weekend. I think anything's possible, but right now it definitely feels like it's Georgia and Tennessee at the top for Chris Cole.
Anything new with Ron Wingo or Cam Michael?
No, I feel like Ryan Wingo's, seems like it's trending the other direction. And then Cam Michael, again, I think it all boils down to, does he stay strong on wanting to play offense? Because Georgia is not recruiting him as such. So if he stays strong on that notion, does Georgia come off of that and tell him what he wants to hear, even though likely they're going to move him to the defensive backfield once he gets there? And does, if they do that, does he buy into it or not? Right now he likes Josh Heupel's offense, and I think that's a big reason why there's real interest there.
And then this one's for anybody. Given the depth in the secondary, how long of a leash do you think a guy like Jalen McCullough would have at the safety position?
I mean, I personally have to think that the competition is pretty intense back there. I mean, just with all the bodies, all the guys that have experience. I mean, I don't know if that means, you blow an assignment, you come out, but I would think that they have enough dudes that, if you're not grading out at whatever after 2 or 3 games, I would think that they are in a position to make a change.
Well, a couple things there. One, Tim Banks is the safeties guy. I mean, Willie Martinez coaches corners. Banks is involved with. I mean, they collaborate, but Banks is heavily involved with the safeties. Here's my question: who are the 2 backup safeties? Turrentine and Christian Charles? Am I right, or am I missing somebody?
No, I think that's probably right.
Jordan Thomas is at nickel, right?
He's bounced around a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of McCullough. I think you'll see them rotate some guys, but I don't know that Christian Charles has done enough this fall camp to – I don't know how great of a fall camp he's had. I think Turrentine's been better getting a lot of work in Wesley Walker's place, so maybe him. But I don't know. I don't know how stiff the competition really is behind those guys in the 2 deep right now.
Did Jordan Thomas's injury in spring slow him down at the beginning of camp and kind of put him behind the 8 ball?
Yes. And again, I think moving him around AP in the spring probably didn't help him get comfortable as well. Trying to teach him star and safety and bouncing him around a little bit before he got hurt probably didn't help him in spring in terms of getting settled at one position.
Agreed.
JB Collins wants to know, what is the difference talent-wise from being the number 1 class in the country to the number 10 class? Where does it drop off?
Just more 5-star type guys. I mean, you look at Georgia. Technically, Ohio State's got more 5-stars than just about anybody, or more than anybody, and they're number 2. I think it just boils down to having higher ranked guys across the board.
Yeah, and in terms of what it means long term, it depends on guys' development. We've seen 5-star guys, Rob Lewis, who could play, who were ready to go. We've seen guys who it didn't pan out. That's always going to be the case. So there's going to be some years where the 7th ranked class, if you reevaluated it 3 years later, probably should have been ranked 2nd or 3rd, right? And there's going to be other years where the 2nd ranked class was the 2nd ranked class. So I think each year is different in that regard.
I don't know if it's just Tennessee because we don't follow everybody as closely. I bet Tennessee, if you go back I've been doing it 20 years. You've been doing it longer. Tennessee has had horrible luck with 5-stars. I mean, think about it. And you got your Eric Berry's pretty short list. And you get Bryce Brown, Chris Donald, Ben Martin. I mean, it's again, I would be interested to look at some other programs and see if there's anything like it.
Blair.
Dontavius Blair, golly.
O.J. Owens was a 5-star safety. I mean,
Brandon Jeffries in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a bunch of those guys for sure. I don't know how it compares to everybody else.
Yeah, I don't either. I have no idea, really.
I mean, I think if you're in the top 10, you're. I mean, that's where you want to be year in and year out. Is it great to say you have the number 1 class? Yes, because by the rankings, you have the best class in the country. it's also about need and fit, and does a guy stay healthy? How focused is he? All kinds of things factor into that beyond just the number. I mean, and I'm not knocking rankings. I'm just saying the number is the number. That doesn't always equate when you get year 2 into the program or year 3 in the program.
Last one here is good to end on from Zeusify for all you guys. What is the best football game you have seen in person? Doesn't even have to be a UT game.
The 0-1 game in the Swamp is from an intensity standpoint, drama, all of those things. That's as good as one as I've seen with everything that was on the line that night. That was a pretty dang good football game there. So that one would be right at the top of my list.
Last year, Alabama be on the short list.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That would be there.
I think
Florida
that Alabama
98.
game too. I know it's most recent and everything, the storylines and all that. Wasn't a whole lot of defense, but it still had a little bit of some things. I mean, there was a defensive touchdown in that game, some missed field goals. Alabama was down by 2 scores 2 times in the first half. Tennessee was behind by a point late in the third quarter. I mean, had a little bit of everything. So I think obviously Tennessee won, snapped a 15-game losing skid, but that was a really, really good game.
Hubbard, what year did Tennessee Alabama play 15 overtimes and Tennessee
3.
won on the road?
Was
that 0-3? Was that?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Last time they won down there.
Yeah, that was a crazy game, for sure. 95 Alabama. That was just a massacre. I mean, Tennessee just carved them up. So that was a different type of game. It wasn't the back and forth type deal that you saw in some of those other games. But I've seen a lot of good ones. I've been blessed to see a lot of them. I mean, I didn't mention the Georgia game. The Georgia Hail Mary game was pretty insanity. There's just a lot. There's been a lot. I'm sure I've left. I mean, the 0-4 Georgia win at Georgia with freshman quarterback Eric Ainge was just a crazy win down there for Tennessee to win.
And then that was at 06 also when Tennessee was at 06. They were getting killed in the first half. Blocked the punt in the second half. Baby. Antonio Wardlow covers Sports Illustrated.
Wardlow did that.
Best like
throw of Eric
30 something.
Yeah, best throw of Eric Ainge's career was a corner out to Robert Meacham coming off the goal line on 3rd down. Best throw he ever made in his career, in my opinion.
What Tennessee-Kentucky game went into like 4 or 5 overtimes? I mean, I was little. I remember
that was the Quentin Hancock game in 07.
Quentin Hancock.
That's
I
right.
wasn't that young.
And that was Dan Williams blocking the field goal with his face mask.
Lonis Sieber, Central alum Lonis Sieber blocked it.
Was the place
Lonis Sieber? Yep.
Wasn't in one of those overtime periods, if I'm remembering correctly, Tennessee had a penalty and backed them way up, and then they scored on that next play.
They had a touchdown. If I'm not mistaken, maybe it was Hardesty or somebody had a touchdown.
It was Foster,
and it was called back. And then they basically did the same thing. They scored a touchdown, then they had a penalty and had to score it again. You had the Arkansas game. That was the overtimes in the Arkansas game at home were incredible. Game should have never been in overtime because Tennessee busted the coverage. It gave up like a 90-yard
Julian Battle, the ghost of Julian Battle.
That wasn't a great game. That was a heck of an overtime deal, but that wasn't a great game per se. 98 Arkansas was probably as good as one as you say. I mean, we can go on forever, but I mean, that was 2 really good football teams in 98 going after it. Nobody remembers Arkansas was undefeated in the top 10 team when they rolled into town on that day. I mean, everybody just assumed Tennessee was going to win, and that was a heck of a football game. I mean, Arkansas played their rear ends off in that game.
The question says, doesn't even have to be just a UT game, but you got to remember, Brent, how many consecutive UT games have you been to?
I've not seen anybody else play other than the former conference known as the Pac-12 After Dark that you watch at 1 o'clock in the morning after you get home from working. I've not been in the stadium for a non-Tennessee game other than one Titans game and a bunch of high school games. I've been at every Tennessee game since. I did not go to Syracuse 98. Ever since then, I've been at all the rest of them.
The West Alcoa game was pretty good last year.
It was a good game last year. It was a really good game last year.
A big thank you, as always, to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for making all this possible. If you need, home repair, a home upgrade, siding, roofing, windows, literally whatever the case may be, give them a call. They can give you a free estimate today by picking up the phone and dialing 524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Like this video. Let's get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. Join us on the General's Quarters over at Volquest.com. Camp rolls on. Game week is just right around the corner. Tons of awesome content coming up for game week throughout this football season, and you can find it all at Volquest.com. For Rob Lewis, Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on this edition of the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.